after the Donald Trump raid, as Nina Turner predicted, several prominent right-wingers came out very angrily against all of the different sort of intelligence services. Obviously, the FBI was the main target. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted out in big, bold letters, defund the FBI. And so Briahna Joy Gray did a segment on The Rising Show where she defended Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweet and her response to this particular incident. We're going to play a brief clip of that right now.
Marjorie Taylor Greene has become America's favorite broken clock, and it's that time of day where she's regretfully 100% right. Now, I don't take her critique in good faith. I don't expect her to keep this up when a candidate of her liking is in control of the deep state, but you should. Her hypocrisy doesn't have to be the hypocrisy of the average conservative voter. Remember, the FBI is an organization that told MLK to kill himself while failing to investigate Emmett Till's murder. It called off the investigation of the white supremacist church bombing that resulted in 4 little girls being murdered in their place of worship, and spends resources instead surveilling Muhammad Ali and raiding the homes of elderly civil rights activists. The FBI is bad precisely because it has always been a political weapon. And if it turns out it's being weaponized against Trump, that is a real problem. But it would also be one of the only times the FBI has gone after people with the power to actually defend themselves. Let's keep this abolish the FBI energy up the next time they come after normal Americans too. People who aren't billionaires. People like you and the folks that you love.
All right. I think that was very, very well said. And Briahna Joy Gray actually tweeted out that very segment, a slightly extended version of that. But I'll put that up on the screen right now so we can all take a look. She tweets out here, Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about the FBI, bad faith or not. In today's radar, I argue the left should take advantage of the right's new acknowledgement of systemic bias and push to abolish the FBI, an institution that has always protected elite power, not the people. And she got piled on by, the usual lot of people who call her, a closet conservative, fake left, blah, blah, blah. You're carrying water for the alt-right fascists. You're enabling the Nazis, right? This was a particularly revealing response here by this account.
Go after the men in black.
What's that?
Good thing she didn't go after the men in black.
Yeah, right.
They're very popular.
Exactly. This response here, to me, illustrates a very key distinction that almost nobody in this online left space has been able to wrap their head around. This guy represents a real sort of misunderstanding of some very key concepts here. Don't you, meaning Briahna Joy Gray, don't you hate it when Democrats praise George W. Bush or Liz Cheney for being half right about one specific issue? Glad you would never do anything like that. Okay, so he tries to own her there. She comes back with a very intelligent response. When did I praise Marjorie Taylor Greene? Please point to the words I use that could constitute praise of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Is your contention that saying someone is right about a narrow issue, referring to them as a broken clock who is acting in bad faith, is praise? To act as if coincidental agreement on a narrow issue means that you are praising that person, that person's character, that you are upholding that person as an exemplar of virtue and wisdom, is of course fucking absurd. And what this guy says, don't you hate it when Democrats praise George W. Bush or Liz Cheney for being half right about one specific issue? No. He's got it wrong. Democrats don't say Liz Cheney is a bad person who happens to be right about January 6th.
They say she should be the fucking president.
Say
she should be the unity candidate.
Well, yeah, they praise her character. They say Liz Cheney, they even articulate it exactly that way. They say, I disagree with Liz Cheney on almost everything, but she is a woman of great character who believes strongly in our Constitution and the rule of law. So when the shit libs talk about Liz Cheney, they are not just illustrating this narrow area of coincidental agreement. They are praising Liz Cheney, the woman. They're praising her, the person. And that's the distinction that no one seems to be able to make in this space, because everybody is so dug in that any just acknowledgement of reality that does not fit their narrative about what is true, what is false, and who people are and who they are not, and who's good and who's bad, just doesn't jive with them. This is what the Russiagate thing was all about. It was very obvious to any clear-thinking person that Russiagate was total bullshit. And those of us who saw that very early on and articulated that very early on, what did people come at us with? They say, why are you defending Donald Trump? They read our debunking of Russiagate as a defense of Donald Trump, when it had nothing to do with defense of Donald Trump. It had nothing whatsoever to do with who Donald Trump was or what kind of leader he was or what his policies were. It was simply looking at a set of facts, a set of circumstances, and a certain narrative that was being spun out of those facts and out of those circumstances, and saying, this doesn't add up. This seems like total bullshit. That's all it was. And they read into that we were defending this odious person who they hated, because ultimately the right's hatred of the left and the left's hatred of the right is all that matters in these conversations. The actual merits of the point, even if, once again, as Briahna Joy Gray said, even if those points are arrived at in bad faith, which in Marjorie Taylor Greene's case, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. The point is, you ought to be able to have that discussion without being dragged for defending Marjorie Taylor Greene, because in no way, shape, or form did Briahna Joy Gray defend Marjorie Taylor Greene, the person.
Well, you know how they used to say the personal is political. I would modify that to the personal is psychological. Let's face it, intrinsically, fundamentally, intrinsically, most people are pretty fucking stupid. You know, I don't care if you went to an Ivy League school. Like, fundamentally, if you ever talk to some of those meatballs, they're fundamentally stupid. Not all of them, but a majority of Ivy League people I've talked to on an intrinsic fundamental level are dumb as a box of rocks. So you got this media climate that basically manipulates people into associating with certain aesthetics and certain ideas and certain virtue signaling behaviors on both sides. And depending, probably there's some, you know, there have been studies done that there's some neurological basis for which of those options you're going to be attracted to, the more conservative or the more liberal. And that's it. You know, they just go to their camp and they go along with whatever they're being told to go along with. Is what I mean by intrinsically stupid, because a lot of these people, it's not that they don't have the hardware to see this obvious manipulation. They don't really want to, you know. And to me, that's being intrinsically stupid. If you just cannot stop for a second and think, because this is your identity now, and this is your, if you've built your identity around it, you probably have a peer group that you'd be at odds with now. You know, you're going to lose friends, maybe your job, if you really start thinking about this. So these people sitting here on Twitter doing this, I mean, they're, you know, I mean, partly it's social alienation, that you need to connect in that way with other people in such a meaningless way. But are they thinking about it? Are they really thinking about it? I mean, it's just like a rat trying to get a dopamine fix off the likes. And, you know, probably anyone who doesn't agree with them has been blocked a long time ago. So they've just curated their little social media dopamine factory to only be full of people who are going to like those kinds of comments.
The point is not whether Marjorie Taylor Greene is a hypocrite. The point here has nothing to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene. The point here has to do with our attitudes toward the FBI. What ought that attitude be? But people can't see that because people just equate what you're saying as either praise or condemnation of a person that they either love or hate, right?
Well,
They
let's
have people who they love, people who they hate. If what you say is construed as praise for someone they hate, they go after you. If it's praise for someone they love, they welcome you in. It's that simple. It's that simple. And there is no room for discussion of actual issues. That's why Russiagate was just it was impossible to get through to these people. That we can oppose Donald Trump and also oppose Russiagate at the same time. It was impossible to get them to weigh those two ideas in their heads. They could not do it. No matter what, they couldn't do it. And it's a similar dynamic here.
Well, and that's also partly because they're the last people in the country who trust institutions, particularly the media. So for them, the idea that the media could speak with one voice like this, and all the party leadership of this Democratic Party institution could speak with one voice, and it could all be bullshit. That's what they really couldn't wrap their heads around. Because if that's true, that opens up all kinds of questions about the things they believe.
Please clap.